Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be casting judgment upon all of the skill champions in the game. So a couple days ago I did upload a video where basically sorted out all the classes according to their current status and current strength in the game overall, in my personal opinion. And now we're going to start off with a class that ranked in the bottom, that means the weakest class by far in my opinion in the game overall, is skill. And now every single day starting today we're going to be going through each upcoming class, and that means by Saturday we're going to be discussing the strongest class in game. If you did miss the class ranking, I'm going to leave it somewhere up there, but the base idea is Monday till Saturday I'm going to be uploading a one video per day ranking champions from the 10th spot till the first one, and on Sunday I will be uploading my overall champion ranking in the game, as in like top 10 best champions in the game pretty much. Right, so with skill class, let's just get elephant out of the room. Skill class is clearly carried by two gentlemen, and then anything that goes below spot number 2 is very close and falls off quite drastically. By that I'm trying to say that a champion that's in spot number 3 could very well easily end up being at spot number 9 or spot number 11 or even spot number 13. The base idea is skill class is a lot of alright, decent champions, each for their own situation. A lot of them are fun and useful, but they're just not that great compared to the top of other classes. Also, the reason why skill class is at the bottom of ranking list is quite simple, because a champion that's going to rank in spot number 3 or spot number 4 in skill class would probably not even get in top 10 of most of the other classes. That is quite significant drop in quality of the champions past the top 2, but still there are definitely plenty of champions that are either very fun to play or are certainly usable. Unfortunately, the champions that did not make today's ranking will be Taskmaster. I think Taskmaster has a lot more potential than I have unlocked with it, and I do think that Taskmaster can offer some very cool things. The unfortunate problem with it is he just not only requires quite a lot of investment, as he does need the signature ability, he's relatively complex to play, and the payoff quite often is achieved easier and better and higher with other champions. But I do think he's still overlooked champion, and more people should try him out and see his true potential, myself included. I have him, I can play him, I don't play him as much as I should to give this guy justice. Then we have another champion by the name of Ronin. I think Ronin is a lot more capable than people give him credit for. And overall, he might very well end up higher on the list had I been more careful and invested my personal attention in him. But that's why these lists are subjective, and that's why I cannot even try to pretend to be able to give ultimately completely objective opinion. I try my best, but it's also dependent on my personal experiences, the things that I have seen, the things that I have read, and the things that I have been able to do with these champions. Then we have Squirrel Girl, which is also another very capable, nifty, fun new champion. Fortunately, just don't have that much experience with her, and I don't really see her to be talked about that much or to be that popular. There are several things that I like about her, but I cannot possibly put her in top 10. And last one will be a champion that's definitely not aged well at all, considering at some point she was definitely within the top 5 in the entire game, but as the time progresses she has been pushed out further and further and further and further, and that's Gwenpool. Right, that being set aside, I must admit to another cheat code. I actually ranked 2 champions in spot number 10 because, as far as I'm concerned, they're virtually identical, and they also serve virtually identical purposes. And I cannot believe I didn't notice it before, up until I actually started ranking these champions. And that is Black Widow, Deadly Origins. It's coming in spot number 10 together with Massacre. Now, both of these champions effectively have this one big, relatively rare debuff that they primarily utilize for offense. Black Widow Deadly Origins is full with Shock, and Massacre is full with Incinerate. Both of them do have conditions to significantly increase their effectiveness, as in Massacre has to light his bat, and Black Widow Deadly Origins has to do that Widow's Insight thing where she intercepts or punches a heavy or special attack, and otherwise you will not get as much effectiveness from her. Other than that, neither of the champions really have any immunities at all. Both of the champions have some ability accuracy reduction capabilities. Massacre on level 1, and whilst he's striking blocking opponents. Black Widow Deadly Origins with her medium attacks and so forth. So there's a lot of similar things going on with them, and I do think that they are relatively equal in their standings. Black Widow Deadly Origins obviously is relatively newer to the contest. I like using both of them. I have fun. I have a lot of fun using both of them. I have more experience with Massacre, and I do enjoy it a lot. But I cannot really rank them further because they don't quite stretch it there. Very, very fun, very enjoyable. Both have their uses whenever you do need to access those respective damage over time debuffs. Black Widow Deadly Origins is Shock, Massacre is Incinerate. Both of them work extremely well with Despair Mastery. Both of them conquer Distract, so on and so forth. Effectively, more or less, both of them do pretty much exactly the same thing as far as I'm concerned. So there we go. Both of them are in spot number 10. Moving on, spot number 9, and there we're going to see some different qualifying factors. Now, spot number 9, I'm personally going to put in Killmonger. And Killmonger is a champion that's extremely solid, and that's, I think, is a very cliche thing to say about champions. But truthfully, that's what he is. He has a lot of armor, a lot of physical resistance, a lot of damage mitigation. He can gain indestructible charges with his level 2, which is also a significant piece of utility. Access to True Strike is quite awesome. But at some place, his utility and usefulness end. And the problem with Killmonger still, several years in, is the fact that he just quite doesn't have a real home besides Alliance War defense. Ever since he got released, he has always been a problem defender in Alliance War. In plenty of quests, you always look for an armor break option for him, and in Abyss of Legends, he's one of the toughest fights to counter. And he is quite tricky to fight against. We see him still as tier 1 Alliance War boss, and typically in every tier 1 Alliance War you can see Killmonger get placed on defense and frequently getting kills. But offensively, there is not that much use. Yes, there are some Killmonger enthusiasts who persist on bringing him in, but truth of the matter is, just don't quite have a game mode or a thing or a matchup where he's a go-to option immediately at the top of our heads. If you do rank Killmonger, you will get use out of him, for sure. If you do rank Killmonger, he's also going to be a champion you kind of rely on because he's sturdy. He's going to let you make mistakes and still finish the fights out. He's also part of some cheesy tactics with Heimdall and Aggression Fury. But I really just wish for Killmonger, I don't know, either slightly more damage output or slightly more utility. For instance, when he was bugged and those indestructible charges worked like Luke Cage's indestructible, when he didn't take any damage from any source, it was a bit OP, but it immediately elevated him so much higher. And if those level 2 indestructible charges would prevent him from taking damage from damage over time effects or passives or something like that, I think he would be quite high up on the list. He's just a bit short at pretty much anything he does for me to say he's the best counter for this, that, or that, and that's why he's at 9th spot in my opinion. Moving on to spot number 8, and oh my, how the mighty have fallen. Spot number 8, I have given to Blade. And let's not kid ourselves, Blade is still an insane option for absolutely anything and everything, including Act 5 and below. He can tank you through basically everything up until that point, but as soon as Act 6 hits, his use drastically falls down. Blade practically doesn't exist in Alliance War offense. Casually, occasionally, we can see him bring an AQ at times, but more often that it's because everybody has him as an option to bring in, not because he would be best man for the job. And Kabam hasn't done Blade any favors. The only dimensional being, for instance, that has been released in like last 2 years has been Cosmic Ghost Rider, who is bleed immune. And other than that, he hasn't gotten really any new ability targets by himself. That means he still relies on Ghost Rider and Mephisto for synergies to target Mystic class and villains. But for most part, we just have better, more effective options when it comes to dealing with mystics. Typically, Human Torch always takes precedent. When it comes to dealing with villains, we take it kind of like case-by-case basis, but Blade is far from the get-go option, more or less, and he's kind of drifting a bit further and further in obscurity. Still a decent option, but at this point, honestly, when people ask me rank up questions, should I still use Awakening Gem on Blade and rank him up? And I ask him, where you're at in the game? And they're like, oh, I'm doing Act 6. And it's like, then don't bother anymore. Really, you have so many better options in other classes and even this one. Overall, I have revisited Blade and he's still capable. The problem is that it just takes too much effort to do. It takes long fights. You do need to use out-of-the-box thinking. And there are better options out there now. So unfortunately, time of the Blade has long passed. It's going to move on to spot number 7. And in spot number 7, I'm currently flipping Elsa Bloodstone. The problem with Elsa, that I personally find, is that she was a champion for a time that never came. Her abilities seemingly fit perfectly to counter several matchups that we started to see and then disappeared. Like these voids with relationship, close distance, long distance relationship, whichever one, the one where you put on debuffs on champions. Basically, what I'm trying to say is Elsa has a lot of things going for her, and she is really, really fun, and she can be used for a lot of things. And I do like to use my Elsa Bloodstone for a lot of stuff. But again, she just doesn't quite measure up most of the time in terms of like damage output and in terms of like utility. The simple fact, for instance, she has a very, very potent ability to shut down evade if opponent has already evaded in that fight. That's like a personal example, but half of the time, maybe not half of the time, but significant portion of the time, if opponent has evaded in that fight already, they had smacked me in the face already and I had lost a portion of my health before I get to apply that cold snap, for instance. And there are just much, much better evade countering options out there that not necessarily rely on debuffs. So ultimately, I do like and I do use Elsa, but she doesn't come up as a great option nowhere near as often as I hoped she would. And that's just the sad fact of life. The champion I want to value, it's a champion that I want to rank higher than I am, but I can't. Because I genuinely do think that despite of all the fantastic abilities that she has, she's just not quite up there. Like, her damage output, baseline damage output, definitely isn't high enough to compete with like the top of the top champions. Her utility is there, but again, that utility can be found with higher damage output typically, mainly in other classes, but even in skill class when we reach the top section. So yeah, I do like Elsa, however. I do think she's a great fun, and recommend rank up if you do have the option to do so. Okay, let's move on and speed this up a bit. We're going to go in with Night Rusher. I do think Night Rusher is one of the most overlooked champions in the game. I do like the fact that he's still one of the very, very few champions that has immediate access to true accuracy, and that means evade and auto-block prevention without having to do anything at all whatsoever. From the first hit of the fight, just play the fight as normal. You can stop all of the evades from happening. That's insanely valuable. He's tanky. He's, I believe, only Incinerate immune champion in skill class. Flat out Incinerate. There are other champions who can deal with Incinerate, but Incinerate immunity is quite unique for skill class. And other than that, yes, I do personally still play and use the guy. I like him a lot. I think he's underrated. And in my personal opinion, he's in spot number 6. There are a ton of videos on this channel and also community posts of why I like Night Rusher so much. I have brought him in Labyrinth of Legends, I have brought him in Alliance Quest Map 7, I've used him in some variants for tricky bosses, and so on and so forth. So yes, in my opinion, Night Rusher is very cool. Also, Night Rusher is getting a small revival thanks to his awesome synergy with Cosmic Ghost Rider. And if you put Cosmic Ghost Rider, Night Rusher, and Mr. Fantastic in a single synergy team, I think it is an amazing, amazing team that covers a lot of ground, a lot of utility, and all of them work absolutely fantastic. It is one of my newfound favorite teams for incursions, for instance, and stuff like that. But yeah, that being said, Night Rusher is spot number 6. Spot number 5 might be contested quite heavily, I think. But nonetheless, it's going to be Falcon. Falcon only recently got his buff, but I do see a lot of promise. And anytime you have an option to shut down opponent's defensive abilities 100%, you have something going on for you. Falcon does have its problems. You do have your weaknesses. He does need high sig to get the best out of him. Not every matchup is going to be for Falcon, but he's one of those champions. If he works well. And overall, I do think for a minor buff, Kabam did quite a good job at Falcon. And much more than anything else, due to a sheer lack of competition, I'm going to put Falcon in 5th place for now. Partially because I have actually seen him be used in Tier 1 Alliance Wars. I've seen a bunch of quite impressive footage. And yeah, Falcon is no longer a dollar store blade as far as I'm concerned. If I had to make a decision, I would genuinely rank up Falcon above Blade for sure. And I do think that people who do end up taking this guy to rank 2 or 3 as 6 stars to get Thronebreaker will get a relatively decent compromise option of a rank 3 6 star, especially if you do have him awakened. I look forward to monitoring him closer. Maybe I am overvaluing him. Maybe he will go down. But for now, everything that I have seen would kind of fit in line to put him at the 5th spot. Now we're going to jump on to spot number 4. And spot number 4 is a champion that I personally haven't really enjoyed. There are many advocates for, and it's HitMonkey. Now, my highest ranked HitMonkey is a 5-star rank 3, and admittedly, I haven't actually used him that much. But in addition to that, I haven't really also heard that much convincing stuff about HitMonkey offensively. Everybody made a big fuss when he was released, and he's not skill chorus, let me tell you that much. He's nowhere near the same quality of a champion, because people forget that if you do have diversified attack, you do not only inherit the strong sides, but you also inherit the weaknesses. A good example here would be new Scarlet Witch. Her level 2 will activate Poison Incinerate and Cold Snap immunity, and that is the way how to access your maximum damage output. For instance, if opponent is immune to one of those things, you automatically lose some of your damage output, opposing if you only had one damage over time effect on that special attack, and you kind of like either work or don't. And HitMonkey also is significantly let down with his block proficiency, his squishiness. He's a very, very squishy character. And for a champion who often relies on dropping 3-hit combos, that's a horrible, horrible mix-up. That's pretty much exactly the same thing why, let's say, Red Hulk or Gladiator Hulk is perfectly playable champions with their block proficiency and high-level content, and why it feels so much worse in Call Obsidian. Because if the champion's playstyle revolves around getting that opening for a parry, dropping a heavy attack or a 3-hit combo and then parrying again, you will end up blocking a lot more, and that shitty block proficiency will shine through much more glaringly, and it's going to be impossible to ignore. There are simple things that just don't go well together enough. He is a good Alliance War defender, and I'm sure that somebody's going to send me a video and look at me, HitMonkey can do this or that fight. Fine. It's just nobody's doing it with HitMonkey to begin with. Same reason why not too many people are using Call Obsidian. Right, now we're going to move on to top 3 spots, and top 3 still, again, as I'm going to say, 3rd spot realistically might as well end up being spot number 8 or 10 in half a year. They do shift a lot in skill class because there are no exceptionally good skill champions outside of the top 2. So just because I'm placing Stealth Suit Spider-Man in 3rd spot, don't think that I value him that much higher than I do Killmonger, for instance, or Black Widow The Origins. Or don't think on the other side that I value Black Widow The Origins that much lower than I value Stealth Suit Spider-Man. But out of all of the, let's say it, skill class mediocre generation champions, Stealthy is the one that seemingly does seem possibly largest amount of use with his relatively large attack numbers, with his good amount of utility to counter Unstoppable, which is quite unique for skill class, ability to prevent miss, and he's never going to be my favorite champion to play with. He's never going to be my first go-to option, but fact of the matter is that I am more likely to use Stealth Suit Spider-Man for a problem fight than I am any other champion, I think, below on this list, because the utility that he possesses is relevant. We do have a lot of Unstoppable. Miss mechanics are becoming more and more popular, and he works for it, and he's quite easy to use. Sorry, my voice there is breaking. It's quite easy to use. He achieves good results. It's quite squishy, but typically you bring him in for a couple of fights. I did actually end up using Stealth Suit Spider-Man a lot when I had my mini account. He was one of the champions that kind of carried me through as a 4-star. But nonetheless, I do think he's currently 3rd best skill champion in the game. And we're going to talk about top 2, and I'm going to try and cut it quite short, because at this point I think everything is self-evident. Aegon, in my opinion, is 2nd best skill champion in the game. Even though I listed Aegon as one of the must-have champions in the game, fact of the matter is that Aegon is much more of an Everest content champion. Aegon is much more of a champion that unlocks new gates, but most of the time you don't really use him all that much day to day, opposing to the top champion. Now, Aegon has gained significantly more value with the release of 6.3 and 6.4, where the quest length increased a lot, and he simply was one of the better options for a lot of fights. But outside of doing 6.3, 6.4, Labyrinth of Legends, or Abyss, you don't really see him used much in day-to-day content because of the long ramp-up and people want fights finished quicker. You don't see him used too much even in quality level difficulty, to be honest, because of the global nodes, and it doesn't really work with Aegon. You definitely don't see him used too much in Alliance Wars or Alliance Quest compared to the other top champions of other classes, or even this class. So yes, he's a must-have champion in my opinion, because he helps so much to clear some of the hardest content in the game cheaper. But ultimately, once that content is done, once you have spent that week doing Act 6.3, or once you have spent those whatever days it takes you to do Abyss, you put him aside and you don't use him day to day, which is a reason why he is in 2nd place. I do like him a lot though, and I do think he is becoming more and more valuable, but he cannot compete with Nick Fury, because Nick Fury is insane. I use him for everything, and I know many other people do. And fact of the matter is, I have a rank 3 6-star new Nick Fury, I have a 5-star Nick Fury, and I often wish I would have 3rd Nick Fury to use. The reason for it is Nick Fury recently I started going on Alliance for defense, fair enough, but then I still have the 565, which I still often use on offense as well, and I often bring in Nick Fury in Alliance Quest due to double life, due to high damage output. And then, if I do want to do some questing or record some videos, I'm like, where are my Nick Furies? Oh, both of them are taken, unfortunately. And I think in the game, of every single champion, Nick Fury currently is the most used champion. As I said before, there isn't an Alliance War or Alliance Quest series when I don't bring him in. He's a constant staple in my questing teams. He's an amazing synergy champion that works for all the classes, and that is the reason why I think he's also still the best synergy champion in the game. No matter how potent Apocalypse and Professor X are, Nick Fury's synergies are really, really helpful and really, really easy to access, because he synergizes with Quake, which is an insane champion, and they help every single champion in the game function better and give you the extra safety net. And overall, yes, you have awage counters, you have insane bleed damage, you have unblockability, you have miss counters, you can purify debuffs. There are just so many things going on for the guy. Not to mention that he's one of the best defenders and one of the hardest champions to fight against. And overall, an absolute marvel, an absolute gem of a design. Hats off to whoever created Nick Fury, because he is by far the best skill champion and one of the best champions in the game currently. My personal most used champion on this account. That's why spot number 1 goes to him. And that is it. I have kept you guys already too long. My apologies for that. Stay tuned for tomorrow when we're going to be going over the second weakest class in the game. See ya.